Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. And in this episode, we are going international. I am super excited to have Ryan Spencer join us from Bath, England. I got my coffee with my trusted advisor mug. I don't know if you drink coffee or not, Ryan.
I have tea, actually.
You have tea. That's
British,
perfect.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Half this audience drinks tea. So I need to maybe keep thinking about coffee versus tea. But Ryan, we're so excited to have you. Why don't you give us a quick intro and then we'll dive into our questions.
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Ryan. I'm a solutions engineer for a company called Feedonomics. So I'm really focused on helping everyone with their problems with data movement, moving it from one place to another. But my journey has not started at sales engineering and it might not finish at sales engineering. So that's a great kind of opportunity to be here. And thank you, Sachin, for inviting me.
Your journey, talk about your journey. Started in research, library assistant. I know I love bringing presenters and members from the sales engineering community who have had very unique experiences. You graduated, you were working at the university. Tell us about what that experience was. Why did you end up going into research?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it leads into something that I think a lot of folks feel, especially in the US, of feeling pressured to get into university and not really knowing what to study or what to do. And I found myself at the end of my university career being, okay, I got a degree in statistics and physics, but I don't know if I really want to do that as a career. So I had about 6 months between when I finished university and my partner was going to finish university. So I decided, let me get into research and see if I like that. And I had a ton of friends at university could help me there. Actually, I invested, funny enough, out in the UK. But then, I found out like that maybe that wasn't the best route for me. Looked around for different sort of opportunities in the area and landed on a totally separate startup that was in State College, Pennsylvania, of all places, and got an opportunity to help build this startup from the ground, which is really an amazing experience. But the research side of things were actually a pretty minor part of my career journey. It just like springboarded me into figuring out what I actually enjoyed doing.
And what transpired you to get a degree in physics?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it came down to, I knew I enjoyed math. I knew I enjoyed learning about physics at the time. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, to be honest. And I knew I wanted to go through the progression of university. And I knew I liked math and statistics, but the degree itself actually required like a totally different minor degree to go along with the statistics degree. So I thought, why not physics? Why not make it harder on myself and study that? And I had a lot of friends that were in that degree path. So it was an obvious choice for me to go that route and try it out. But
So growing up, you were always a math whiz, statistics, numbers, metrics. Tell us about sounds like there's something baked into your personality that's related to that.
yeah, I think it's more about just understanding numerical truths about the world, but also how can we better help people? Right? And I think it came down to the research choice that I picked with statistics was all about like healthcare research and understanding like longitudinal health studies and how we could pull different data points over the past 100 years to help build a better sense of what certain variables are causing health issues in individuals and how can we help those people, which nicely ties into sales engineering. I didn't know it at the time, right? But it was a big piece that I think helped define like where my career was headed.
See, that's why I'm asking these questions because it's always interesting. As much as we talk about how great the sales engineering profession is, and obviously we're sharing these stories to encourage and inspire many others to consider sales engineering as a profession. It's also unique profession. It requires a unique combination of certain skill sets that we talk about on this podcast. And I want to get a little bit into what made you so uniquely qualified to be a sales engineer at Feedonomics. But the reason I'm asking about your upbringing and your interest, because that unique combination comes naturally. And there are different aspects of our personality that are set up perfectly for us to be successful in sales engineering. What I loved about what you just said was you weren't just excited about math and metrics and statistics because you loved numbers, but you immediately said for the betterment of the people, right? For problem solving, for a purpose. Because I think if it was just numbers, you might have gone to be a mathematician. And it doesn't surprise me, Ryan, as you're talking about that somebody at Feedonomics figured out that this guy needs to not just do feed management. This person needs to be in front of our prospects. So give us your journey about, you were at Feedonomics for a while, doing different role than sales engineering. How did that magic happen that all of a sudden you learned about sales engineering and you're like, oh, why am I not doing this?
Yeah, it's a 4-year long journey that might take a little bit of explaining, but essentially I started in Los Angeles with Feedonomics as like the most entry level sort of operational position, sort of data analyst. Like you're going through and you're building feeds, learning the platform, learning how to communicate with clients. It was I call it my first real job out of college because it's separate from the startup opportunity that I had. And it was really where I learned how to be like a business professional. And it's so evolved into learning how to use the platform, how to communicate with clients, how to integrate new clients into the platform, like every sort of aspect that was with the system. And it was back in 2017, 2018. Feedonomics was actually still relatively new. And I was in an office with the 30 or 40 other people that were actually part of the company. So we were in the office every day together. I was meeting with the CTO, the CEO every single day, talking about being on the ground. Very different than a very large corporation that Feedonomics and BigCommerce have become today. But ultimately, I raised my hand for moving out to the UK at one point, and I was just, hey, if you ever need to set up operations in the UK, I'm a guy, my partner left me out there. And a few months later, they were like, all right, let's do it. We're going to get you a visa and we're going to move you out there. At 23 years old, they sent us, and it was like a very big risk for them, I think.
Right.
That's the startup mentality, right? And yeah, it went on from there. So once we were in the UK, we were still doing operations. I ultimately landed in operations management position to help grow the kind of operational presence of our team in EMEA. I had about 5 or 6 folks underneath me that I was working with. And one day, like it was early 2021, I think it was, the singular sales engineer, Feedonomics, reached out to me, and I'd known him for several years. And he said, hey, he also came from an operational background, Patrick Aubrey.
Yeah.
He told me like, hey, like, I think you're going to really like this position. It's called sales engineering. And I thought immediately, oh, it has sales in the name. I don't know if I know.
That's right. I don't want to be part of the sales. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a sales guy. Like that's I do operations, right? And you're like, let me tell you about. I'm like, got on several calls, walk me through everything, and yeah, it just went from there. It was a big operational change for my little organization out here to figure out how to replace my ops management role. But we got there, and it's been an amazing journey since.
You said, what is it about sales that was like initial hesitation for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, during those first 4 years that I was at Feedonomics, I had a certain idea of what sales was. It was very much the tail end of the deal. Like I might get looped in right before the deal signs, be like, hey, this is what's going on, jump in and discuss it. And ultimately what I found was that a lot of times, especially when there wasn't a sales engineer on the deal, it was me as the operations person coming in and being like, oh man, I got to figure out like all these systems and all the ways that we can integrate with this client and make them happy and solve the problem. But I had about 3 days to do it rather than a full sales. But yeah, I think that was my initial impression of it. It was going to be very chaotic and very much the same sort of thing I was seeing in operations, but on the sales end.
I love that many companies intentionally change the title from sales engineer to solutions engineer to remove that hesitation right around it's not a sales role. And I know a lot of people listening, and there's probably a lot of people in your network that have had operations experience or research experience, may never even consider sales engineering role because it's got sales in it. And they may have certain perception about, I'm not a sales personality. Once you are a sales engineer, you have a different empathy for what sales truly is. It has a lot of negative connotations to it. If you're not in business side and you're more on the tech side, now that you're part of sales, has your perception of that changed in a way?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that it has changed for sure. Being a part of a relatively small subset of the sales organization within EMEA, right? Like we had 2 sales reps, we had 1 sales engineer, myself for several years out here. It was definitely like that Batman and Robin type of relationship, right? Like we were very tight knit. We were very on top of making sure that we were scoping everything out operationally to make it as easy as possible, not only for our operations team, but also for the client, and just making that process more seamless for everyone. That's how my mind shift has shifted. And like the extra pay is great. The extra sort of title or whatever you might get from it is great. But I think just at the end of the day, being able to help set the company and set our operations team and set up our product team for success is like what really gets me going.
So for you to play that part in ensuring that you're setting the right expectation in sales and you're bringing customers that are going to be customers for long term, it's very rewarding. Are there certain aspects of things that the sales reps that you work with in general that have done that empowers you as a sales engineer to go above and beyond for them?
Yeah, I think it's like any relationship, it's always give and take. I think I've worked with sales reps and I've worked with people in general that just expect you to do your role and to do the thing and closing the deal or do whatever for them without any sort of reciprocation, which I don't necessarily agree with. But being part of a really small sales team, it was very easy to give candid information and candid feedback whenever there was issues. We built this really amazing culture. It was a really eye-opening experience for me to switch from a fully processed out organization to something that was more of, hey, there's these three guys selling the platform here, and we have to make sure that we're doing it right. We're following the processes, keeping up with what's required.
You have the operations mindset. A lot of SEs don't. Are there things that you've observed and implemented within your sales and SE team that have benefited from somebody coming from that process orientation? Are there things that you feel you've been able to accomplish that maybe other SEs can learn from?
Something that whenever we get a new SE in, I'm always curious about what is their operational background? Were they just working like in a support context, or were they managing fire, like escalations from clients essentially? And if not, that's honestly fine because they bring in a really unique perspective to the team that we can actually all lean on and learn from. Yeah, there's folks that have come directly from our operations team within the SE org and they have their own sort of set of skill sets. But then we have folks that have come from totally different companies, totally different backgrounds. And this is their first SE position at Feedonomics. I've really enjoyed being part of that sort of experience and that kind of like, how do we grow our SE org to be as diverse and accounting for all these different sort of perspectives so we can learn from it and grow and not just sit in this sort of stagnant expectation of what an SE should be.
Sales by definition is very chaotic. So there's certain aspect of sales that doesn't gel with operations and process. The best sales reps that I've experienced have a method to their madness. They've got a template, they've got a process, they've got rinse and repeat, and they play the playbook so well that outcomes are so predictable.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the SE role is almost, I don't want to say putting guardrails on, but it's also working with the sales rep to minimize the chance that a prospect who signs ultimately cancels, right? Because that'd be like the worst case scenario, right? Like whatever has been sold is not actually what the client needs. And I think the best sort of sales reps have that methodology, like you said, but also understand that they're not the experts in terms of what can be accomplished. And that's where the FD comes in, helps bring in that sort of understanding of, okay, here's the client problem. We can solve 85% of it, 15% that we can't solve. Here's a sort of workaround solution, or here's like a method with product that we can go down and understand how can we actually support this to fully make the client happy.
What keeps you going? What's exciting about this role that you're like, I just want to keep doing it at least for some time?
It's definitely about all the different problems that land on my desk every single morning. I never understood that because we're on the front line, the prospects coming into the company, there's constantly new problems coming that fall within our sort of standard set of what we can solve at Feedonomics. But also there's prospects that come that have totally new, unique problems that actually I view as opportunities. And how can we take our platform that's very scalable and flexible and can do all these amazing things and apply it to this new problem, potentially create like a new solution? That's what really gets me up and going in the day. And now as like a team lead, I just moved into a more of a team lead position as we hired like a new SE in this region. My focus is now sharing that excitement with other people, right? And making sure that they understand like, hey, this is a really cool opportunity for us to really make a name for ourselves at the company. And
I'm assuming in research and statistics, the time frame for when you identify a problem to when you solve it might not be as quick. So there's a higher level of instant gratification in this role that you might be experiencing.
Oh yeah, totally. It was talk about like processes and guardrails, like in the sort of research institution, like all your grant funding and everything is all about following a very strict sort of proposal and like what you've already decided to work on. And that usually is like a several month, about several years process. Every day was a new problem, a new challenge, a new way that we think about building things. And it was always like, okay, interesting. We have this set of tools. How can we like apply that to this problem to help solve it and ultimately client, right? And that's what gets it very exciting as an SE to have that opportunity to and not only have fun with it, but to get paid for it as well.
People that are listening to these podcasts, if they happen to have similar background than you, what would transpire them to say, hey, you should think about this profession?
For folks that are in research or really into physics or statistics, there's different reasons why they might be into that. And it could be for the new exciting opportunities and finding new models or finding new ways to look at the universe. But for me, like what I really enjoyed about those two things was problem solving in general and understanding the tools that were in my tool set, tools that the universe granted us, and that we understand like what we can do and work with from a physical standpoint. And how can we apply that to solving X, Y, Z? And for me, that I didn't click at the time, but I think like what I've learned over the past 7 years of my professional career is that problem solving and helping people is really exciting and gets me up and going. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people that are in research and still trying to figure out what they want to do.
You're not giving up the desire to make a difference. You're not giving up the desire to help people. You can translate that into a sales engineering profession and still do that. I'm sure many prospects, Ryan, that engage with you really are appreciative of you understanding where they're coming from, what they're trying to solve, because without your guidance, they may not have seen the success that they're seeing.
I know they really appreciate when you come in with like an empathetic mindset and really just like I'm here to help. I want to do everything I can to make this easier for you.
I really appreciate, Ryan, sharing your journey with us. Amazing experience coming from statistics, research, physics to finding your path into sales engineering and now continuing to grow as a sales engineer. I talk a lot about how SEs can be SEs for life, or SEs also end up being great product managers and great business leaders and great founders. We've had people on the podcast who have gone into different trajectories because the sales engineering professor exposes you to so many aspects of the full business that you can take advantage of it. So thank you for sharing your wisdom, your journey with us. I really appreciate it.